اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله، يا إمام الرحمة، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين، يا علي بن أبي طالب، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد، يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله، اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي، أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين، يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي، أيها الباكر يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوصلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القادم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضاح يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوصلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحاد النكي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. Ask for your hajat. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم عمتي وأدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد صلى عليه وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Tuesday night after Dua Tawassul, inshallah, continuing with the short surahs of 30th juz with the Tafsir. We did Tafsir of chapter number 105, Surah Fil last week. And tonight, inshallah, we'll do Tafsir of Surah Quraysh, chapter number 106. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts by saying, in gratitude for solidarity among the Quraysh. لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ. Their solidarity during winter and summer journeys. إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Let them worship the Lord of this house. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. One who has fed them and saved them from hunger and secured them from fear. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. This surah is a supplement to the preceding one, Surah Al-Fil, as we mentioned it last week as well. It must be recited together in Salat just like Surah Wal-Duha and Surah Wal-Inshirah. If recited alone, salat will be invalid. It describes the blessings on the tribe of Quraysh so that they might be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship Him. And the Lord of the sacred house, Kaaba, from which they obtained all their honor and social status. The Quraysh, of course, were the tribe of Rasulullah. It was his own clan who opposed his mission. That's the challenge sometimes people have to face. That when your own folks, oppose you. You can take the opposition from outside and you can deal with the opposition that is an outside source. But when you have opposition within, that's the difficult one. Imagine someone who, hypothetically speaking, buys a car. Outsiders might say, well, that's a very expensive car. You could have gotten a better deal. You should have done this. You shouldn't that. I say, whatever. But when the same criticism comes from inside the house, then it really hurts. I did all this. I bought this car. And then I'm getting all the criticism where it's not good, the color is not good, or this is not good, or that is not good, or you spent too much money, all that stuff. You can take the criticism from outside, you don't really worry about it. But when the criticism comes from within, that's really something which hits the heart. So Rasulullah, he brings this madhab, this deen, he announces, proclaims that he is the Nabi and that he is the Rasul, and he brings the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He recites the ayat of Quran. Who's the first to oppose him? His own tribe, his own family members, his own uncles that start to oppose him. And while they opposed his mission, they felt they were the only aristocrats fit to live in Makkah. They don't want anyone else coming to Makkah. And that concept of Arab and Ajam could be understood. They don't want anyone else being part of this society or coming and living in Makkah because this is an elite place and they want it all for themselves. If the army of Abraha was successful in destroying Kaaba, as we recited in the previous surah, chapter 4, trade of Quraysh would have perished. So people ask, what is the connection between the two surahs? Why are they considered to be one surah? Why they must be recited together in Quran, in namaz, in salat? Reciting one individually will invalidate your prayer because you have to recite a complete chapter after Surah Fatiha. He said, because previous chapter talks about Abraha, field, the elephants, and the destruction of the elephants. The connection, if the army of Abraha was successful in destroying the Kaaba, trade of Quraysh would have perished. To protect the livelihood of Quraysh, Allah destroyed Ashabul Fil, and thus you see the connection between the previous surah and the surah. They're divided with a Bismillah in between, but they're basically one chapter. After the destruction of Ashabul Fil, people showed extra respect towards the custodians of the Haram. Now they say, well, this place is protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by this special force that was sent down to destroy this apparent enemy who was threatening our livelihood, our lifestyle, and our family, and our tribe, and our city. Now Allah is protecting it right away. It gains that popularity. Some of the words that are used in it, ilaf comes from the root alif, lam, fa, or ilf, or alafa, or allafa, which is the root for three-lettered verb, and its root is ilaf, which means congregation and solidarity. So the translator of this, the translation that I used, translated as solidarity. Against the customs of Jahiliyyah, which valued bloodshed and war. They were always looking for an opportunity to fight. In fact, one of the struggles that many of the Muslim empires had to go through, especially the Ottoman Empire, the army was very strong. It was an institution. And the ruling family, the Ottomanis, the Ottomans, there was always this struggle between the two because the armies were always threatening to overthrow the government. Although the army was under the Ottoman Empire, but there was this struggle that they had all the time. So when army is that strong, the military is that strong, even the government fears that there might be some sort of a revolt against them. So, because of the Jahiliyyat custom, they were always looking forward to bloodshed and war. The repetition of the words ilaf and ulfat expresses God's grace and mercy to Quraysh. Now look, it's not always about war and fighting and this and that. No. Have compassion for one another. Show mercy to one another and love to each other. Quraysh, of course, the name of the tribe of Rasulullah. All of them were from the progeny of Nadr ibn Kanana, these Qurayshis, who was also known as Quraysh. The word rahla, which is used, means a state in which insan is riding on something and on a journey. So they would travel mainly by camels or the horses at that time. Our rahila is the cars that we ride on, the trains that we use, the planes. These are our rahila. Shita and Saif, of course, the two seasons of summer and the winter in which they used to make these trades. In the summertime, they would go towards the north, which is Syria. In the wintertime, they will go to the south, which is present-day Yemen. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا, fa in the beginning means therefore, they should worship. Ju' and khawf that are used, one means hunger and the other one means fear. Khawf means fear and ju' means hunger. لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ, since the Quraysh became accustomed, the word ilaf as used in the original is from alafa, as I mentioned before, which means to be accustomed to. As we mentioned, translation of solidarity or congregation. Here is used, some believe that it is used in the meaning of accustomed to be reunited after breaking up. So when things have been broken apart, now when they're brought together, that's called ilaf. Or when you use the word talif-e qalb, you might have heard this terminology, talif-e qalb. What is talif-e qalb? Meaning showing love and compassion to the heart. For example, it is mentioned that you can give your sadaqah to non-Muslims. Why? Talif-e qalb. That with that, they will be inclined to your good deeds that your religion teaches you. So that's called bringing people closer to heart. Talif. About the lam that is prefixed to ilaf, le-ilaf, there are different opinions. I won't bore you with the different opinions, but because it has a point towards the end, I'll mention it. Some Arabists have expressed the opinion that it is to express surprise and wonder. Le-ilaf. Thus, le-ilaf Qurayshin means how surprising is the conduct of Quraysh. It is only by virtue of Allah's bounty that they have been reunited after their dispersion and become accustomed to the trade journeys which brought them livelihood and prosperity. So when you say لَإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ, it has that element of surprise in it. How are these people that they were only united after what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did to them? So that's one reason why they translate that as the element of surprise in it, or wondering, or express surprise in it. Some people hold this opinion because when the Arabs mention something after lam, usually this lam appears in many of the ayat of Quran. The same thing itself is regarded as sufficient to show that the attitude and conduct a person has adopted, in spite of it, is surprising and is amazing. لَإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ. There's a surprising element that is behind it. On the contrary, there are others who have mentioned that this lam is for ta'leel, meaning bayan of illat, the reasoning. Le-ilaf, lame illat, the reason. When you say because of this, the lam translates as because of this. So when you read this ta'leel, it relates to the following sentence, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Meaning what? Allah's blessings on Quraysh are countless. But if for no other blessing, they should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least for this blessing. And by this bounty, they became accustomed to the trade journey. For this one by itself is indeed a great favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there was nothing else given to them, this itself would have been enough of a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them to go ahead and worship Him. Why do you and I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Begs the question. Why do we worship? Why do we do ibadat? Quraysh were doing ibadat, or they were told to do ibadat, Layla fi Qurayshin, because they were dispersed. Allah brought them together. They were disunited. Allah brought them together. They didn't have, means of doing this trade journey to expand their, livelihood and to be able to earn. So because of that, Allah is saying what? Because I did that to you, go ahead and worship me. You and I, why do we worship? Well, it could be multiple reasons. You remember the hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam said, Inna qawman abadullaha. There's a group of people that worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raghbatan, because of some sort of reward that they want from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tilka ibadatut tujjar. This is the worship of a people who are businessmen. Businessman mentality. I do something for you, you do something for me. So I want reward, oh Allah, so I'll go ahead and do worship. Then Imam continued, Inna qawman abadullaha rahbatan. There are a group of people that worship Allah out of fear. What kind of worship is this? Tilka ibadatul abid. That's the worship of a slave. They're fearful. Oh, if I don't do worship, I'll be thrown into Jahannam. So the first group worship Allah because they want what? Jannat. The second group worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because why? They're afraid of Jahannam. You and I do that. Why are we doing ibadat? We do ibadat because we like Jannat. We do ibadat because we don't want to go to Jahannam. Straightforward as that, right? Nothing hiding. We're not even hiding this. Imam said these are okay. But that's not why I worship Allah. Third group of people that Imam mentions, he said, Inna qawman abadullaha shukran lahu. There's a group of people that worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of graciousness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tilka ibadatul ahrar. This is the worship of those who are free. Freedom lovers. First group had lalach, tama'. They wanted something. There was greed. Second group, they were fearful. Both are okay. You and I fall into the same category. My mom says, I am not part of the first group nor the second one. I am part of the third group that worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of thanking Him. Thankfulness, because that is the ibadat of those who are free, freedom lovers. So inshallah, our ibadat can also develop the value that Ali ibn Abi Talib is mentioning. Ilafihim rahlat ash-shita'i was-sayf. Of course, there was this journey that they would take to Yemen and to Syria. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. The house, the Holy Kaaba. The sentence means that the Quraysh have attained to this blessing only by virtue of house of Allah. There are certain places, they're blessed because of the wujud of certain personalities. Karbala had no value. Nobody knew what Karbala was, where Karbala was. Nobody cared for Karbala up until the Shahadat of Imam Hussain. Nobody went to Karbala for anything because it was just a plain desert in the middle of nowhere, hot as the temperature goes. Those who've lived in Iraq and the neighboring towns in Karbala, we've gone to ziyarat in all the weathers. I'm sure you've been to Karbala when it's really hot over there. Who wants to live there? But until Imam Hussain makes that journey, Karbala becomes Karbala Mu'alla. It becomes Jannatul Mu'alla. It becomes a paradise on earth. You've heard these words. Why? Because of the pure and the sanctified blood of Imam was shed on that land. That land became Babarakat, blessed. Now you see millions and millions are flocking to Karbala, going for ziyarat. Otherwise it was a land, was not even worthy. It's not like, there's great landscapes in Karbala. It's not like you got the rivers flowing, you got the jungles, and you got the mountains, and you got, some abshar or the falls. No, nothing exists like that. Things that we imagine. You go to north, you go to Niagara Falls, you go to south, you see, the Caribbean, you go to the Amazon, you see the jungles, you go to other places because of the natural beauty that exists. There's no natural beauty in the surroundings of Karbala, you tell me. It's just plain desert. Weather is not that good either. It's very hot in the summertime. But then Imam Hussein makes his journey. He's buried over there. Now this place is the markaz and the center of the attention of millions of people in the world. They all make this journey out of their love toward this land because of who's buried there. Same thing is with Kaaba. Nothing exceptional about the land itself. It is due to the Kaaba that exists in Makkatul Mukarramah that it draws all the attention. They themselves acknowledge that the 360 idols which they worship are not its Lord, but Allah alone is the Lord of this house, the one who protected it from the attack of Abraha. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ, who fed them against hunger and secured them against fear. The last ayat, and I'll conclude. The illusion applies or implies that before the Quraysh came to Makkah, they were scattered in Arabia and living miserable lives. After their gathering together in Makkah, they began to prosper. Right away, there's this prosperity. All of you, many of you made the journey from your homelands. You came here for prosperity, for better livelihood. After their gathering in Makkah, they started prospering, and Prophet Ibrahim's prayer for them was literally fulfilled when he had prayed, when he has left his family in, oh my Rabb, I'm leaving behind my family, biwadin ghayri zi zar'in, in a very barren land. There's nothing in this land. These are the words of Hazrat Ibrahim. Lord, I have settled some of my descendants in a barren valley. Barren valley means nothing grows in there. It's awful weather. It's got desert in it. You don't expect anything growing over there. There's no greenery over there near your sacred house. Lord, I have done this in hope that they will establish salat there. So turn the hearts of the people towards them and provide fruits for their food. The land which is not going to grow anything out of it, you find the land now becomes a center of attention for all of the universe. People are gathering over there. Primarily why? Because the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. Secure against fear. I'll skip that. Some of the virtues of reciting Surah Quraysh. Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whosoever recites this surah, Allah will bestow upon him rewards equaling to the person who performs tawaf of Kaaba and sits in i'tikaf in Masjid-e-Ali Haram. If you want to sit in the i'tikaf of Masjid-e-Ali Haram, you want to do the tawaf of Kaaba, recite Surah Quraysh. You get the reward and the thawab of it. That's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just imagine how much it would be to do i'tikaf over there. And then he says, continues, and if this surah is recited upon the food which a person has fear of eating. Food is brought to you. You're fearful this food might be harmful to you, making sure that there isn't anything haram in it. You recite this surah on it. Don't recite the surah on haram food. You say, well, the food was bought from McDonald's and you recite Surah Quraysh on it, it'll become good for you. No, that's not what it's saying. Don't quote me before you do that. No, there's a food that is brought for you. You know that it is halal for you to consume. You're just fearful that, it might end up upsetting my stomach, or it might not be good for me, or I might see some harm from it. Or someone might have played a trick and done something to this food. You recite this surah on top of it. It says the person who recites upon the food which a person is fearful of eating, Allah will make that food cure for this person and will not harm him one bit. So by reciting this surah, you get the thawab of doing the tawaf of Kaaba, i'tikaf in Masjid-e-Ali Haram, and the food becomes secure. Prophet also added, whoever recites this surah on the food will not receive any bad effects from it as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to be able to understand and follow the commands and the teachings of Quran and Ahlul Bayt salam. All the hasten the reappearance of our weighted Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khiyarat Allah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya Abdullah, assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa ala jaddika wa abika wa ala ummika wa akhik wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya Gharib al-Ghuraba, assalamu alaikum ya Mu'in al-Du'afa wal-Fuqara, assalamu alaikum ya Shams al-Shumus wa Anis al-Nufus. أيها المدفون بعرض توصلي ابن موسى الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك شريك القرآن. أجل الله تعالى فرجك. سهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من